I was at the University of Pennsylvania in like 1982 through 85, okay? And I went to a lecture that he gave, and he said things like, well, as every school child and quantum field theorist knows, yeah, just like spontaneously laughing for no reason, the number of generations is tied to the index of an elliptic operator on a Calabi-Yau manifold. And the guy next to me says, I've been a quantum field theorist for 40 years. I don't know any of this stuff.
Whoa.
Right? So he came onto the scene and started telling us how everything was going to fit together. And nobody had ever heard a story like this. This is, by the way, lost to history because we've fictionalized what happened with string theory. This person was so far ahead that nobody wanted to contradict him. He said this was the way. You know, there are 5 string theories or whatever there are, 6, 4, I can't remember. And it's going to be one of them, and in 10 years we'll have the whole thing wrapped up. And everybody wanted to be on the winning team, knew that they weren't going to go up against this because they couldn't even figure out how he was doing what he was doing. And what was really going on was very different than people understood. Quantum field theory, which is now claimed by most physicists to be the most advanced theory we have, at the time was sort of a grab bag of different techniques. You know, just like not unified. He saw that this was effectively a coherent whole, and with help from a couple of other people who are often not as well acknowledged, one of which would be Michael Atiyah, another which would be Graham Siegel, another which would be Dan Quillen, and my good friend and postdoctoral advisor, Isidore Singer. So there's sort of a small cabal of people who figured out that quantum field theory was not only a coherent story, it didn't really have to do with physics at all. It was like calculus. You can use calculus to do physics. In fact, you can't do physics without it. But you can also use calculus to optimize inventory and make your profits go up. And so as a result, quantum field theory was discovered not to be physical. It was a framework that one physical input to that machine probably generates the world. But the machine itself isn't about physics. So this was the most romantic backfiring in the history of physics in a certain sense. These guys set out to say, we are going to quantize gravity. In other words, quantize geometry, the geometry of Einstein and Riemann. And what happened was exactly the reverse. They gravitized the quantum. They geometrized the quantum. So it's been a remarkably productive, the reason we can say how brilliant this person is because he geometrized the quantum at a level that we didn't know was possible. On the other hand, he never made contact with physical reality the way he was expecting and promising to do. So he's both the most accomplished of us and the person who drove physics the most off of the road. And if you attempt to give him his due, and if you're not comfortable citing both of these things, you can't be an accurate historian, but he's still running around and nobody wants to go up against him.
How old is he now?
He was born in 1951, so he'll be turning 72, I think, later this year, if I'm not mistaken. And then we get to the really crazy part. Quantum gravity is really due to 2 families. One is a husband and wife team, and the other is father-son. The husband and wife team were named Bryce DeWitt, formerly, I think, Bryce Seligman, don't know why he changed his name, and his wife Cecile DeWitt, or Cecile DeWitt Moret. And the father-son team was Louis Witten, who is still alive, now 101 years old, and Edward Witten. And then the really weird stuff happens. And this is why I was like curious about UFOs and gravity and all this stuff. The actual genesis of these 2 families having this outsized impact on the future of theoretical physics comes from 2 different people who are almost never talked about. Matter of fact, most physicists have no idea their names. One is named Agnew Bainson, and the other is named Roger Babson. And these 2 guys were deep into anti-gravity. So the world's greatest mind and greatest living theoretical physics mind is the son of the most prominent anti-gravity researcher, I swear, I kid you not, from the 1950s.
Whoa.
Whoa. Now, there's an official story about this. And the official story that both the DeWitts tell and the Wittens tell is, oh yeah, there were these crazy people, they were very embarrassing, they were always focused on anti-gravity. But we were clever enough to defraud them of their money to do real gravitational research. Ha, ha, ha.
They both said that? Both families?
Well, they didn't use defraud.
But that's kind of what they implied?
That's correct. because it's an embarrassment. And in order to understand this hugely productive period relative to the stagnation is incredibly high prestige. Like most of the positions at the Institute for Advanced Study, the top physics department ostensibly in the world, right? You had a director named Robert Dijkgraaf, string theorist. You had Edward Witten, string theorist. Natty Seiberg, string theorist. Juan Maldacena, string theorist. And you had this guy, Nima Arkani Hamed, who I hope you will have on this program, who is amazing, who is not a string theorist, but very string sympathetic. This thing dominated. It just took over. And this weird genesis of a high prestige field that can't accomplish what it's setting out to accomplish is in contrast to this mixed period between 1953 and 1973, where you have the world's most prestigious physicists palling around with pseudoscience. UFO type stuff, gravity shielding, all this stuff. So Babson is so crazy. You can't even believe this story is true. But he claims that his sister drowned in a pond because even though she was a good swimmer, she couldn't overcome gravity. So gravity becomes his sworn enemy. And he's going to use his fortune that he's predicted from, that he's gotten from predicting the crash of 1929 because of Newton's laws. What goes up must come down. So he gets out of the stock market 6 months early. Babson makes a fortune. He, Edison, and Clarence Birdeye of frozen food, fame, form this sort of little intellectual collective where they're going to defeat gravity. So for example, because people are going to say, Eric, this is all nonsense, and it isn't. Jamie, is it possible to pull up a stone monument at Tufts University to the anti-gravity that was done there? So put in Tufts stone anti-gravity. This guy littered universities all across the country with these monuments to prove that this anti-gravity stuff was actually taking place at American universities. And he established an essay contest. All right, so check this out. This monument has been erected by the Gravity Research Foundation, Roger Babson, founder, to remind students of the blessings forthcoming when science determines what gravity is and how it works and how it may be controlled. This is about UFOs and the idea that we are going to harness the power of gravity and we are going to get a supreme advantage. And these stones are littered around the country.